Dustin shocked me because we were shooting a scene.
Yes, look, you're gonna have to do it. You're gonna have to do it. I'm gonna have to do it.
I'm very sorry about this.
My wine glass was sitting there, and he just with his hand, brushed it so that it whizzed by my nose and broke on the wall, and little pieces of glass.
No one ever saw this coming from Meryl Streep. For almost 50 years, she carried herself like Hollywood royalty, untouchable, elegant, and spotless. No public fights, no messy scandals, not even a hint of drama. But now, at 76, something in her finally snapped. In a moment that left everyone stunned, Meryl dropped a confession nobody was ready for. She straight up admitted there were actors she didn't just dislike, she couldn't stand them. When those names came out of her mouth, the entire industry went silent. These weren't just random co-stars or old rivals. These were legends, people everyone assumed she respected and even adored. But her honesty didn't end there. Meryl went on to spill what really went down behind the scenes, and she didn't sugarcoat a thing. Every story came with sharp detail and raw emotion that even shocked her closest friends. Once you hear what she said, you'll never be able to watch those movies the same way again. Let's start with number 1. Alec Baldwin. Acting to Meryl is sacred. It's about discipline, purpose, and perfect emotional timing. She studies every script like a scientist, breaking down each line and gesture until it's flawless. But Alec? He's the total opposite. He thrives on chaos, on raw instinct. For him, it's all about improvisation, throwing in whatever line or joke pops into his head. When these two powerhouse actors were paired together, sparks didn't just fly, they exploded. Nancy Meyers thought putting Meryl Streep and Alec Baldwin together would create perfect balance, artistic magic, but instead, it turned into one of the most quietly explosive clashes of Meryl's entire career. From the very first week on set, everyone could feel it. The air was thick with tension. Crew members noticed how stiff Meryl's posture became, how her calm composure cracked just a little every time Alec went off script. Whenever he randomly changed a line or twisted a joke, Meryl's eyes would tighten, her patience slipping bit by bit. She never confronted him in front of everyone, but her irritation found its way through in rare cutting moments. After one particularly messy rehearsal, she was overheard saying comedy has to be grounded in truth, otherwise it's just noise. That line hit deep. It was her way of saying Alec's style was pure chaos. To Meryl, his unpredictability wrecked the emotional rhythm she worked so hard to build. Alec, on the other hand, wasn't backing down. He believed Meryl's perfectionism was killing the natural energy of the scene. With his trademark grin, he told a producer, "Truth happens in the moment. If you rehearse it to death, it dies." That statement summed up their entire war of styles, precision versus impulse. Years later, Meryl spoke about it carefully, choosing her words like a diplomat. "We had different philosophies," she said. Coming from her, that was basically a quiet jab. Alec often laughed about the tension, joking, "Oh, Meryl hated me. Absolutely, but I was having too much fun." Yet behind the laughter, he admitted they just never clicked, saying, "We didn't always mix." The feud never exploded publicly, but it left a lasting mark. Meryl reportedly turned down several projects that would have reunited them, and since then, they've kept things polite. They nod at industry events, exchange respectful smiles during interviews, but beneath the surface, that creative divide still runs deep. Number 2. Kevin Kline. To Meryl Streep, acting isn't just talent or instinct, it's pure grind. Months of digging, studying, and completely losing herself in the character until every emotion feels lived in. Before the cameras even start rolling, she's already built the soul of her role piece by piece, making sure every detail rings true. That's her code, absolute truth in performance. Kevin Kline, though, he couldn't have been more different. Where Meryl demanded structure, Kevin thrived on chaos. He loved moving through a scene like it was jazz-free, unpredictable, and wild. He believed real acting came from not planning at all, from letting pure instinct take over where logic couldn't. So when the two were cast together in Sophie's Choice back in 1982, it looked like a dream combo. Two powerhouse performers, one heartbreaking story. The chemistry seemed effortless on screen. But behind closed doors, things were far from peaceful. The rehearsal room felt tense, like walking into a storm. Meryl threw herself into preparation. She studied Holocaust survivor accounts for months, worked endlessly with dialect coaches, and dissected Sophie's broken psyche with surgical precision. She even learned both Polish and German. convinced that Sophie's fractured way of speaking held the key to her pain. Kevin, though, didn't get it. To him, all that heavy prep was too much. During one tense rehearsal, he reportedly stopped mid-scene and asked her, "Are you sure the audience cares more about your vowel sounds than what she's feeling?" That line hit Meryl like a knife. To her, Sophie's voice was her pain, the sound of someone torn between languages, identities, and entire worlds. What Kevin saw as overthinking, Meryl saw as survival. That clash of philosophies didn't just create friction, it reshaped how they both approached acting forever. Kevin Kline's remark hit Meryl Streep harder than anyone realized. It wasn't just a critique, it cut straight through the core of her craft. His comment dismissed everything she built her process on, and from that moment, the divide only grew wider. After filming Wrapped, Kevin made a fatal PR slip. He casually told interviewers that Meryl's method was a bit academic. Maybe he meant it playfully, maybe even respectfully. But for Meryl, who had poured her heart and soul into that role, it felt like a quiet insult, a jab that stung deeply. Crew members on set said they saw the change instantly. The two remained polite, sure, but the warmth vanished overnight. One producer even recalled she respected his talent, but after that she didn't trust him. That distance became permanent. Kevin, for his part, brushed it off with his usual charm. When asked years later about their tense working dynamic, he chuckled and said, "Meryl likes to prepare, I like to leap, that's all." But behind that grin, he never denied the tension, he just softened it. Meryl, on the other hand, never softened at all. Always graceful in public, endlessly professional, but privately, she drew a firm line. Insiders say she turned down every project that would have paired them again, even decades later. Every time a script with Kevin's name crossed her desk, she reportedly vetoed it in silence. They'd occasionally bump into each other at award shows, but Meryl kept things cool and formal, the kind of politeness that says more than any argument ever could. Then came number 3. Jack Nicholson. Now this is where things get legendary. In Hollywood, some rivalries don't explode in the open. They simmer quietly for years, shaping entire careers from the shadows. The tension between Meryl Streep and Jack Nicholson became exactly that, a cold, silent standoff that insiders still whisper about. It never made scandal headlines, but it changed casting choices, twisted studio plans, and left behind one of the biggest what-ifs in movie history. The tension between Meryl Streep and Jack Nicholson didn't just pop up overnight. It had been brewing quietly since the late 1970s. Back then, every major studio in Hollywood was dying to get them on screen together. Producers imagined the ultimate power duo, Jack's wild, explosive energy clashing perfectly with Meryl's razor-sharp precision. Heavy dramas, political thrillers, literary epics, scripts were flying around every year. Everyone swore their combo would be box office gold. But after a few promising meetings, everything fell apart fast. The issue wasn't chemistry, it was philosophy. Meryl saw acting as a sacred craft, a moral calling that demanded discipline, emotional depth, and total truth. To her, every role was a mission to uncover something real. Jack, on the other hand, saw acting as pure attitude, a playground for instinct, charisma, and chaos. He thrived on unpredictability and charm, never chained down by preparation or planning. Then came the moment that changed everything. In one interview, Nicholson smirked and said, "Preparation? That's intellectual masturbation." The quote tore through Hollywood like wildfire. Most people laughed it off, saying, "That's just Jack being Jack." But for Meryl, it wasn't funny. It was personal. She had spent decades mastering her craft, studying dialects, psychology, and every emotional layer of her characters like a scientist at work. To hear one of the industry's most powerful men mock that level of dedication in public, it hit her like a blade. Someone who was in a studio meeting with both of them later said, "Meryl's face didn't move, but everyone in the room knew she was done." And she was. Jack didn't seem bothered at all. He just leaned back, grinned, and shrugged it off, completely amused by her intensity, as if her passion was just another punchline. Jack Nicholson reportedly told a friend afterward, "She's brilliant, but man, a little tightly wound." That one comment spread fast, and it didn't help his case. Casting director Juliet Taylor summed up the divide perfectly, saying, "Jack represents everything Meryl thinks is wrong with stardom." And she was right. Meryl never bothered to deny it. Instead, she stayed silent but firm, vetoing project after project that had Nicholson's name attached. No public drama, no fiery statements, no scandal, just a quiet wall that never came down. Even when studios dangled massive paychecks and Oscar-bait scripts in front of her, Meryl refused every single time. She drew her line in stone and never crossed it. That was the end of the Streep-Nicholson dream pairing. Number 4. Dustin Hoffman. Now this story is Hollywood legend. Some actors live off pure instinct and chaos, while others rely on control, trust, and deep emotional truth. Meryl Streep and Dustin Hoffman stood on opposite ends of that artistic battlefield. And when they collided on Kramer vs. Kramer, it became one of the most quietly bitter clashes in American film history. Meryl treated acting like delicate surgery. Every word, every silence, every breath mattered. She approached scenes with the care of a surgeon making an incision, intentional, precise, and deeply respectful of the emotional anatomy underneath. To her, acting was sacred, a partnership built on consent, honesty, and mutual trust. Dustin, he came from the total opposite school. He was a soldier of the method, raw, unpredictable, and ready to push anyone's limits if it meant getting a stronger performance. He believed truth came from chaos, not control. He'd test his co-stars, blur emotional boundaries, and turn real tension into cinematic electricity. As he once told a young actor, "You can't fake reality." That mindset would soon turn his scenes with Meryl into something unforgettable, for all the wrong reasons. You have to force it. That's what Dustin Hoffman believed. And on the set of Kramer vs. Kramer, he did force it on Meryl Streep. The moment that defined their lifelong tension happened early in production, during a scene meant to show the raw pain between their characters. Without warning, without rehearsal, and absolutely without consent, Hoffman suddenly slapped Streep hard. The sound cracked through the set like a gunshot, freezing everyone in place. It wasn't in the script, it wasn't planned, and it definitely wasn't safe to Hoffman. It was his method, a way to pull out genuine emotion. But to Streep, it was a betrayal, a complete violation of trust. Crew members later said the silence after that hit was haunting. Meryl didn't scream, didn't cry, didn't storm off, she just froze. The kind of stillness that chills even the most seasoned professionals. Later, when she was finally asked about that day, she described it with her signature calm precision. That was overstepping, that was not acting. Those weren't emotional words. They were measured, but heavy with the weight of a real wound, and it was clear she would never fully forgive him. From that day on, the tension only got worse. Hoffman kept improvising, crossing lines and throwing real objects during takes. He hurled real insults, testing her patience and pushing scenes to a breaking point. Director Robert Benton suddenly found himself less like a filmmaker and more like a referee caught between two completely different worlds. Meryl's disciplined artistry versus Hoffman's reckless chaos. One crew member later said, "Some of the most powerful moments on camera weren't performances, they were eruptions." And that's exactly what the world saw: raw, electric, unforgettable emotion. The movie went on to sweep the Oscars. Hoffman took Best Actor, Streep Best Supporting Actress. But behind the golden statues, the damage was permanent. Their on-screen magic came at a cost, and the battlefield between them never healed. Meryl Streep walked away from Kramer vs. Kramer with an Oscar in her hand, but also with bruises of a very different kind. Decades later, when asked about her experience working with Dustin Hoffman, she didn't hold back. "Professionally productive," she said, "but personally, intolerable." That single sentence said it all. Hoffman's responses over the years were anything but clear. Sometimes he defended his actions, claiming it was all in service of the art. Other times, he tried to soften the story with half apologies, excuses wrapped in artistic justification. He once admitted, "I was trying to help the scene, maybe I pushed too far." But Meryl never budged, not even an inch. She never worked with him again, and she never pretended that what happened was okay. Number 5. Gwyneth Paltrow. Now this one stung for completely different reasons. If there's one thing that rubbed Meryl the wrong way, it was effortless stardom, the kind that looks deep and meaningful on the surface, but underneath feels a little too easy. Not arrogance, but polish. The kind of fame built more on branding, privilege, and image than on sweat and sacrifice. For Meryl, acting had always been earned, serious, disciplined, and rooted in years of hard work. So when Gwyneth Paltrow shot to fame in the 1990s, Streep didn't see an inspiring newcomer. She saw a warning sign, what Hollywood was slowly becoming. Gwyneth's rise was smooth from the start. Blythe Danner for a mother, Bruce Paltrow for a father. She didn't climb the ladder, she was born at the top of it. Roles seemed to land in her lap. Critics adored her elegance, and the industry treated her like cinematic royalty before she'd even proven herself. Meanwhile, Meryl stayed silent. No praise, no comment, just that cool, deliberate silence that said everything without a single word. One of her longtime friends later shared what Meryl once said in private. "It's talent, but it's never been tested." To Meryl Streep, Gwyneth Paltrow symbolized a whole new breed of Hollywood celebrity. Fame without the fight, success without the scars, effortless, inherited, and boosted by all the right names and connections. And nothing exposed that divide more brutally than that night the Oscars. Paltrow took home Best Actress for Shakespeare in Love, while Meryl, after giving one of her most emotionally demanding performances in One True Thing, walked away empty-handed. She smiled for the cameras, graceful as ever, but behind that polished grin was pure frustration. Friends later said she dismissed that entire award season as a marketing contest dressed up as an award show. She never said Gwyneth's name out loud, but everyone knew exactly who she meant. That moment drew a permanent line between them. From then on, the distance only grew wider. Whenever Meryl was asked about rising stars, she'd shower praise on Cate Blanchett, Amy Adams, Jessica Chastain, women known for digging deep, doing the work, living their craft. But she never mentioned Paltrow, not once. Insiders couldn't help but notice the icy energy at award shows, the forced smiles, the polite nods, the lack of warmth. Paltrow, at least in public, kept things classy. Early in her career, when asked about Streep, she stuck to a carefully rehearsed answer. "Meryl is the greatest. I adore her, everyone does." But behind closed doors, the story was different. A former publicist recalled her sighing backstage, saying, "Meryl's never liked me. I don't know what I ever did." That quiet confession said it all. The chill between them wasn't imagined. It was real. Number 6. Jeremy Irons. Now this one shocked everyone. Out of all the names Meryl Streep reportedly holds in quiet memory, Jeremy's might be the most surprising, not because of any loud feud or public scandal, but because their collaboration should have been cinematic magic. Two classically trained legends, Meryl Streep and Jeremy Irons. On paper, it sounded like perfection. Both respected for their precision, depth, and raw intelligence. Everyone expected brilliance, but behind the camera, it turned into a quiet disaster. To Meryl, acting wasn't performance, it was excavation. She dug deep into the soul of every character, unearthing truth, trauma, and emotional history from the inside out. Every tiny detail mattered. The way someone walked, the pause before a word, even the rhythm of a breath. She used to say, "An accent isn't performance, it's biography." That was her philosophy, her religion. Jeremy Irons, though, saw it completely differently. To him, acting was architecture, precise, clean, and controlled. He treated every role like a sculpture, carved to perfection. His performances were smooth, elegant, and emotionally contained. Where Meryl dove into chaos, Jeremy built walls around it. He believed restraint was power, while she believed truth needed to be lived through every raw emotion. At first, their different methods just made rehearsals a little tense. But soon it got colder, personal. Then came that rehearsal, the one crew members still talk about. Meryl had been perfecting her character's accent for weeks, layering subtle cultural tones into every phrase. She delivered the scene with total focus. Then Jeremy looked at her, waited a beat, and said, "It's very technical. Don't you think the audience will care more about the feeling than the phonetics?" The room froze instantly. To Jeremy, it was just a casual comment. But to Meryl, it was pure sacrilege, a direct insult to the foundation of her process. One crew member later said, "You could feel the air change." Meryl didn't snap back. She didn't raise her voice. She just hardened. From that moment on, the wall between them was set in stone. Jeremy saw her as indulgent, and Meryl saw him as dismissive, two masters locked in silent opposition. To Meryl Streep, Jeremy Irons' performances felt cold, almost hollow. Their scenes together turned into duels, not collaborations. His cool detachment clashed head-on with her raw, trembling vulnerability. The air between them was thick with tension. They could stand inches apart, trading lines written with quiet emotion, yet somehow the space between them felt miles wide. Crew members whispered that they had never seen two actors so physically close and yet so emotionally disconnected. One assistant director summed it up perfectly. They were in the same scene but in two completely different worlds. That contrast bled through every take. Jeremy's delivery stayed calm, composed, and calculated, while Meryl's emotions poured out like an open wound. It was mesmerizing and miserable at the same time. After filming, Jeremy tried to keep things diplomatic. When asked years later about working with Streep, he gave a careful answer, his tone cool but respectful. "We simply approach things differently. She digs inward, I build outward." Elegant words, but everyone could hear the quiet distance underneath. Meryl, on the other hand, didn't bother with subtlety. Without naming him directly, she once said in an interview, "Some actors mistake restraint for depth, stillness for truth." The industry didn't need her to say the name. Everyone already knew who she meant. Their relationship never healed. They stayed polite at award shows, smiled for photos, and exchanged quick greetings, but that was it. There was no warmth, no spark, no second collaboration, and soon Hollywood caught on. Producers stopped even suggesting projects that included both of them because Meryl's answer was always the same: no. And as the years went by, one truth became crystal clear. Even the most celebrated actress of her generation carried hidden wars, silent creative battles that shaped her career more than anyone ever realized. 6 actors, 6 stories, and a lifetime of silent grudges finally dragged into the spotlight at 76. Meryl Streep, Hollywood's untouchable icon, turns out to have weathered more behind-the-scenes storms than anyone ever guessed. From creative clashes to quiet rivalries, these stories remind us that even the most graceful legends aren't immune to tension and truth. So now it's your turn. Which of these Hollywood clashes shocked you the most? Was it the chaos with Hoffman, the Cold War with Nicholson, or the silent frost between her and Paltrow? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I want to hear your take. And hey, if you loved this deep dive into hidden Hollywood drama, don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and turn on those notifications so you never miss another story that peels back the glitter and shows what really happens behind the fame.